Alright, everyone. From the previous lessons, you should now understand the significance of JSX. So, in this lesson, let's take a closer look at the syntax and some key points to the JSX. JSX, short for JavaScript XML, is a syntax extension for JavaScript that simplifies writing React components. It allows developers to use HTML-like syntax directly within JavaScript files, making the code more intuitive and visual structured. The XML part refers to a data format used in the past for storing and transmitting data. Although XML is still used in some projects, it's less common nowadays. Let's quickly discuss it. For example, if I want to store information about a student with two attributes, the student's name and age. In XML, it would look like this. First, you write a student tag to represent that it is a student, not something else. There's a start tag and an end tag. What attributes does the student have? There's a name, and the name also has a start and end tag. What's a name? Let's say Alex, and the age is 25. You can continue adding more attributes within the student tag. You can also transmit this information. Later on, people gradually stopped using XML and switched to something better, JSON. Why? Don't you think the data in the XML, Alex and 25, is stored with a structure that's more complicated than necessary? But with JSON, it would look like this. Isn't this more convenient for storage? Additionally, there's a built-in JSON object in JavaScript that provides two particularly useful methods. JSON parse converts a JSON formatted string into the corresponding JavaScript value, which could be an object, array, number, etc. JSON stringify converts a JavaScript value such as an object, array, into a JSON formatted string. These methods are commonly used to handle data exchange, such as parsing data from APIs or storing data in a structured format. Therefore, JSON is simpler and more convenient for both storage and conversion, which is why it became more commonly used. Next, let's look at the actual code and see what specific syntax and points to note about JSX. We'll use the code from Lesson 4. The first point is that when definition a virtual DOM, don't use quotation marks to wrap it. This is easy to understand because it's not a string, so why use quote? Now, let's say I want the ID to be root and the content to be Hello React. But I want to dynamically read these values from variables instead of hard coding them. So I create two variables. I'll name them my ID and my data. How do I pass these variables into a tag? This is the second small rule in JSX. If you want to mix JavaScript expressions inside the tag, you need to enclose the JS expression in curly braces. Therefore, the ID should be set to curly braces, my ID, and the content should be replaced with curly braces, my data. After saving it, it should display correctly. Next, let's say I want to apply a style to this data. For example, in the head tag, I create a style tag and define a class called title with the red background and centered. How would we do this in regular HTML and CSS? You'd probably add a class attribute to the h1 tag with the value title. Let's check in the browser. It seems like it's displayed correctly, but don't assume it's fine. Open the console, and you'll see an error. It says invalid DOM property class, and it also suggests, did you mean class name? As you might have guessed, in JSX, if you want to apply a class, you shouldn't use the word class, but instead use class name with the letter N capitalized. After saving, the error disappears. This is because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So to avoid conflicts, JSX uses class name. So the third rule is when specifying a class for styles, use class name instead of class. Now, I want to add another inline style to make the text color of Hello React white. It's simple. I can wrap it in a span and apply an inline style. So we add a span, then use the style attribute with color white. Let's save and check it out. However, this will throw an error. It says the style prop expects a mapping from style properties to values, not a string. And it gives an example, starting that when using JSX, the style must be written inside two curly braces. Some of you might wonder why there are two sets of curly braces. The outer set represents a JS expression, and the inner set presents a JS object. Since it's an object, the value must be enclosed in quotes. Otherwise, the browser will interpret it as a variable. Additionally, if I want to write a property with two words like font size, I would use camel case notation. So should write like this. This is the fourth point. Inline styles should be written in the form style equals double curly braces, key value pair. And the key should be in camel case format. Next, I want to add an import element below this line. If you add it directly like this, an error will immediately appear. Why? Because JSX requires only one root element. Here, you are trying to have two root elements. This causes the error. The solution is to wrap everything in a single element like a div. This resolves the problem. However, it still won't work if you don't add a / at the end of self-closing tags. In JSX, self-closing tags must include the /, which is a strict syntax requirement. Unlike HTML, where the / can be omitted. JSX follows XML rules, so the / must be included. Once you add /, the issue is fixed. Now, some might feel uncomfortable adding a div here to wrap everything. What if you don't want to add any tags? Then you can use a common trick in React. Wrap everything in React fragment. This tells React, hey, this is the only root element, but don't render it in HTML. You can see that it now compiles with the syntax and does not render any extra elements on the page. You can also use its shorthand, which is an empty pair of angle brackets. This is the fifth point. There must be only one root element. If you don't want extra element to be rendered on the page, then you can use fragment or an empty pair of angle brackets. And the sixth point, self-closing tags must include the /. Now, let's discuss the seventh point regarding tag names. If a tag starts with a lowercase letter, it would convert it to a corresponding HTML element. If there's no corresponding HTML element, an error will occur. What does this mean? For example, if I write a codex tag onto the import tag, containing please thumbs up and subscribe, and save, it might seem fine. It renders correctly in the browser. But when you open the console, you'll see an error. It says the tag codex is unrecognized in this browser. And it suggests if you meant to render a React component, start its name with an uppercase letter. So in JSX, if the tag starts with a lowercase letter, it will look for a corresponding HTML element. But it doesn't find one here, so it throws an error. It also suggests that you might have meant to write a custom component with a capital letter. So let's try that. We change codex to capitalized. Now the console says codex is not defined. Why? Because I haven't defined the codex. This is the second rule. So if the tag starts with an uppercase letter, React will look for corresponding component. If the component is not defined, it throws an error. Since codex starts with an uppercase letter, it doesn't look for HTML element anymore. Instead, it looks for a component named codex. To define a component, we'll cover that in the lesson after next. Next lesson, we will do a small JSX exercise to enforce the knowledge we've learned so far. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.